I spent years reading and watching video after video, listening to podcasts, and finding out different ways to optimize life when I didn't even have the basics in order. I was stuck in a consumption loop, an addiction of consuming and never using and utilizing the information I had absorbed. I had absorbed so much knowledge and so much info from so many different places, but I had never actually applied it in the real world. This led to me later on finding out that the vital skill of action and other skills that I need to develop were not where they should be because I had only been consuming knowledge and not putting it into practice. When I was finally attempting to create a business and finally make moves into making these ideas into reality, it presented a problem. My identity was aligned with that of a learner, that of someone who is always willing to learn new things, grow, understand, and basically consume. But it was not of that of a doer. And that led me to not ever making actual progress toward the goals that I had in mind or had envisioned. Business or any work or endeavor, they all require certain key aspects. One of these aspects is taking action despite fear, despite the perceived risk or unknown factors. It requires courage to act in spite of the unknown. And it requires being resourceful in multiple definitions of the word. In these different interpretations, finally, once one starts to become resourceful in using the things they have available to them and the knowledge they have acquired up until that time, only till then will you start to take meaningful action towards your vision and your mission, and will it start to materialize and become a reality. So, how can this be done? How can we actually go from 0 to 1, from not having any foundation to starting to lay the final or the initial bricks and build that foundation brick by brick? How can we go from not knowing what to do to finally doing it and starting? Well, that's a great question. And it turns out that's the only question that actually matters. Because until we go and pass that resistance, that threshold of action, we're still spectators in the game. Recently, or technically a while back, I read a newsletter from Thomas Frank. You may have watched some of his videos. He's a YouTuber / content creator, and he had taken a small break for a period of time from posting videos to his YouTube channel. He had been doing various software things and working on different Notion templates and other products, but he finally wanted to come back to YouTube. And in his mind, he was thinking he wanted to create a banger a video that would make a huge splash and something extraordinary and extravagant. And he had all these ambitions, these things that he really wanted to achieve and wanted this video to materialize in. And in the end, none of it worked. None of it actually materialized. It was all in the realm of ideas. Now, it wasn't until his teammate had a heart to heart and told him, Thomas, this video can be great, but we got to get something out. Something is better than nothing. And until you have a finished product, we're kind of screwed here. This is not going to lead anywhere. So eventually, he made just a simple face to camera video explaining where he had been. And this video was finally a finished product that he released. And that was able to build the initial momentum. And now he can move on and work on other projects. And that is now no longer a barrier in the process. So this story exemplifies something we probably all have faced different points in our life, faced at different points. When you have an idea or an ambition that you really want to create, or maybe just a vague sense of what it is, but it never actually comes to fruition because we don't actually start. We don't actually go from nothing to something, and we don't escape the loop of consumption and learning. And while consuming and learning can be something valuable, something of value, it's not actually what's required, because you can only consume so much until it becomes worthless. Like you'll never reach the point where you've consumed enough to the point where you're fully prepared, fully informed, and you know all of the factors at play. It's never going to happen. That's why taking action in spite of the unknown is the most important skill you must have. Because until you reach that point, your acting muscle is weak. You're not going to ever make progress. So the point is, lower your standard for action. That is the solution for finally breaking through these barriers and these resistances. And once you lower your standard of action, you'll finally be able to make steps in a positive direction. So when it comes to lowering your threshold of action, what does that actually mean? And how is that useful? Well, especially if you're in a self-created loop or black hole of consumption, this is a vital thing to do to decrease that threshold and to start getting in control of the things you do daily and the actions you take towards this vision. Even if it seems useless, unimportant, or something unimpactful that will never get you to that point, just the act alone, simply doing the task, is going to help you strengthen that action-taking muscle. And eventually, you'll get strong enough to start tackling harder and harder tasks. So a strategy that I like to call chunking, you may have heard of it before, is when you take these tasks and break them down. So let's say you want to start a YouTube channel, for example. Whenever thinking about this, you want to find the most important thing you must do, the task that must be accomplished in order to achieve that end result. And you might think that task is, okay, let's just make the first video or the next video if you're already past the initial phase. And for many people, that is enough. That could be chunked down for plenty for you to actually start taking action. But for a lot of people, and maybe for you, that could be too daunting. That idea of just making a video and posting it and that whole process could be too daunting of a task if you're just starting out. So that's where chunking comes in. Take that task and chunk it down. Break it down into the most manageable of things to do. And only chunk it down until the point where you're now so able to do that task. It's so manageable that it would genuinely make you laugh if you didn't do the task. Something so simple like opening the document or, writing your first few letters as the title, like in SpongeBob when he just writes the on the page. Even that is enough to get you in motion and in momentum toward creating instead of continually consuming. So once you break it down to that point, you will decrease the action threshold sufficiently, enough for you to actually get going and start to take those actions. And those little steps may seem like they're not actually important, but they're everything. Those steps are what lead you to the next and the next. And the domino effect is going to take place where you topple that first domino and it leads you to finally making some real progress towards your goal in that direction. And that's finally when you'll begin building momentum. Take the action and it will compound over time. And those results will be real rather than imaginary. And it is scary. It can be uncomfortable and feel unnatural if it's not something that you're used to doing. And this is exactly why it must be done. Because until you actually cross this threshold, you're still a sideliner. You're a bystander or a witness. Someone who is on looking onto all the other players of the game who are playing their hearts out. And you're in the painful position. And I was there at one point as well. I feel like everyone has to be there at some point, where you're painfully looking on and wanting to be in the other person's position, even though you don't know what it's like to be there and you haven't put the work to get there. And it's painful because you feel like you're stuck. It feels as though you're not getting anywhere and it's just like you're running in circles. And the way to break out of that, to become a player, is to finally start taking these small actions and break it down and do that consistently. So, take action and focus. Set your intention based on things that you control. Action-oriented things preferably, rather than something that is out of your control, that other people or other factors they have power over. So that is how you become a player of the game, and you stop being a sideliner, a bystander, a witness, an onlooker, a watcher, viewer, etc. And only then will you begin to level up, and will you begin to gain real-world experience, building your skills until you'll actually begin to see some real success. This requires focus, courage, and sacrifice. True sacrifice of all the shiny objects and all of the things that you could be doing rather than the things you know you must do to get closer toward your vision. And with this done consistently, your positive actions will begin to gain momentum, compound, and you will reflect on your past with gratitude. So far, that's been my experience, and I'm only in the beginning stages, but it's the truth. You only begin to become a player once you take the action. So, with that, thank you for watching, and we will catch you guys very soon. Let's do this. Peace.